Okay, friends, we are here discussing lesson 35 in A Course in Miracles, which I just love. I just love every lesson. I just love every lesson so much. My mind is a part of God's. I am very holy. Now, I'm going to be a little vulnerable here because I was kind of called out by one of my dear friends, and she said, "Where's the sparkle? Where's the sharing, the intimacy that brought so many people into your world in 2020 and so forth. And there was so much light that would come through you. And I could attribute that to, well, I was living in Mexico. All I did was drink juice and fast. It was like a happy aesthetic, living off the grid. Um, I could say it was because, I didn't live in the US. I didn't feel the heaviness of life. There was an element of freedom living in Mexico that it just has been elusive here. It's been a lot more work to stay in the light here. And so many hard things have occurred in my life too. So when I came to this lesson today, it was so interesting because it was like my mind is a part of God's and I'm holy. Like there are moments in life where that doesn't feel true. And the mind will give circumstantial evidence to how that is not true. You are not holy. And I'm remembering this relationship that I'm still kind of recovering from, this friendship that I've been really extracting some of the lessons. Not the one who I talked to who said, Marie, get back online and share your reflections first and then read the Course of Miracles. So you know who you are. Thank you for doing that. You were right, as always. Um, but what I realized is that there was some fear in showing my light again online, to claiming that my mind is a part of God's and that I am very holy. There was this ignorance is bliss energy in my life for literally 20 years. Like I was, I was so bright. I was sharing love. I was running around the world talking about how only love is real. I was working with yoga students and teachers in their practice and their businesses. I claim and I still claim and own that when I work with anyone, I will see the light in you, even when you don't see it in yourself. Like that is my purpose, that's my function. And so it does take a significant amount of commitment to the belief that my mind is a part of God's and I am very holy for me to be able to do that. And so I felt very misunderstood. I felt that there was like this theme that happened around 2020, 2021, where all of that beautiful intention and all of that goodness came into question. And the question was, is she really that great? Is she really that holy? Because she said this, and I think she might be that. And even though so many people in my community believe and practice A Course in Miracles, believe in the tools, believe in the material, one of those thoughts, one of the lessons is these thoughts don't mean anything. So even though they were having thoughts questioning integrity, they weren't applying these thoughts don't mean anything to those thoughts. Just like in the previous lesson, I could see peace instead of this and looking for anxiety provoking, unloving thoughts and canceling it out with the practice of the day, which is I could see peace instead of this. That was the one before. It became like an infestation, like a virus that literally I was sharing with this friend yesterday that almost felt like a spell. Like I was so wide open and I was only here to serve. And I'm still only here to serve, only here to share loving consciousness, to be a vehicle for love in a body. That is my only function. But it has become more difficult to subscribe to this idea in A Course in Miracles that my mind is holy, that I am a part of God. You know, the Course teaches us in the text that ideas don't leave their source and that we are ideas in the mind of God. And it uses that truth to show us that when we have ideas of judgment, that thought is not leaving its source, even though it's a projection. And we're saying it's out, you're the one who did this. You're the one who was inauthentic. You're the one who didn't, whatever, pay the Yoga Alliance on time. Well, the Yoga Alliance was funding all sorts of crazy stuff. And I was in deep reflection around how do we enter into this new age in our community and our business. And I was questioning a lot at that time. And the dynamic was I was there to serve you, these people, this community. And when that community didn't get exactly what they wanted from me, it was like a question of everything, a question of all of the work. I mean, I remember working with women who had been abused as children and seeing their divine light and seeing that actually that didn't happen to you. That happened to your body, but you are not your body. Like we did immense, deep, transformational work that guided people out of their adapted personalities and who they thought they were into who they actually are, which is an idea in the mind of God. My mind is a part of God's. I'm very holy. That is the essence of the message in A Course in Miracles. That is the material with which I share this divine information, this cosmic information, only because that's what I've been tagged with. That's the Dharma, that's the purpose, that's the function. And even though there have been questions of integrity and there have been all sorts of attacks, you know, this is, I was lucky in a way that I had avoided that for so long that it almost was like a compound that lasted a good long years that ended in a very tumultuous, very strange unfolding of a relationship that now I look at and I think to myself, had I have believed and remembered that my mind is a part of God's and I am very holy, I would have never allowed the dynamic in that relationship to drive so much of it. You know, when someone comes at you and critiques you and you know, you're feeling really bad about yourself, but they're masquerading it as love. I say this because I love you. You know, we've got to look at that. How do we want our relationships to feel? If we are subscribing to spiritual content and our desire is to integrate that content into our lives, it begins in relationships with people, in relationships with food, with time, with your purpose. It's everything. The Course teaches that everything in life is a relationship. So when we're getting this feedback, I think it's really important. And unfortunately, I had to learn it the hard way and over a stretch of time where it was really deeply depressing and sad and confusing, where I really, it was like an existential crisis. It was like, but I was only here to share the love. And that's what I was doing, or at least that's what I thought I was doing. And so there is this part of me now that wasn't as present, maybe in the beginning with the study of A Course in Miracles, and then it kind of phased out. And then it kind of came back with a vengeance, this aspect of the mind, of the ego, that would say, that's not true. That's not true. And this is why. And it's to that conversation in between our ears that we need to attend. It's to that conversation. If I am creating tumultuous relationships, it is because I am subscribed to some negative thinking about myself. I am not saying over and over and over again, but my mind is a part of God's. I am very holy. In the face of no matter what is occurring. And through the previous lessons, we've learned that we are the ones creating our external reality. So until we take 100% responsibility for what we've created, we can't change it. So I own my part in this, the part of me that was weak, that was afraid, that had self-doubt, that went into my cave and started to lick my wounds and think nobody loves me anymore. I own that part of my experience, and I deny its power over me. And I'm saying, that's enough. That's enough. This relationship that kind of nosedived. I remember a line from this friend, and she said, "Don't ACIM me. Don't ACIM me." And I thought, okay, but that's what this is. That's what I believe life is about. It's an awakening into the truth of who you truly are. Who are you? My mind is a part of God's. I'm very holy. So if you're getting that feedback, take it as a sign to change direction, to forgive, to move on, to let it be what it is. And there needs to be consistency between what it is we say and how we show up in the world and how we relate in our relationships. Now, look, I have not been perfect. I mean, my marriage is one of those primary relationships where I mean, I could pull so much content from it. But one thing that I've really shifted in the last few months, 6 months probably, is the way is the judgment. I've really fine-tuned and been discerning on where my mind wants to go into judgment to prove that he's not good enough. But look, if I'm pointing my finger towards him, I've got three fingers back at me. Whatever is lacking in a relationship is what I am unwilling to bring to it. So if I am willing to bring ACIM wisdom to this relationship and that relationship doesn't want it, then I've got to go where there's flow, where there's ease. And gratefully in my marriage and in a couple other very tight relationships, there is a free flow of information. It hasn't always been perfect. It's not always been easy, but there is this decision that we've made that we are holy, we are worthy. And when we step more and more into that positioning, sadly, it does seem that there is more of a negative projection that will come at you. And people will question your integrity. Why? Because can you do it now? And that's the message of Christ consciousness that I find so like grounding, that in the face of anything, the Christ, the idea of Christ, the man, was fully subscribed to his divinity as he moved through his human experience. And it wasn't always easy. And a lot of people questioned him. Now, do we need the crucifixion archetype? Do we need to go through that in this life? I do believe that we do. That there's going to be times when you're going to feel like you've been nailed up to a cross. But the message, the deeper cut here is, do you get off that cross? Do you resurrect? And there were only 3 days, in between the crucifixion metaphorically and the resurrection. So yes, there is a time frame here. And for some of us, it's longer. For me, it was almost 5 years where I was just like, I couldn't even. And during that time, given my level of consciousness, I did attract some really negative experiences, in quote. But all of it, again, if I'm subscribed to my own teaching, is happening for me, right? This is happening for me to awaken. And there are a plethora of opportunities that continue to present themselves, and everything is used for the highest. So the more that we have a daily practice and that we allow these magnificent, often feeling, the magnitude, the grandiosity of these ideas to permeate our consciousness, the easier it gets. And that's really what happens. I mean, the stretches when I'm not practicing yoga, when I'm not practicing A Course in Miracles, I spiral. And then I'm spiraling and then I get it invested in that. And I don't want to come out of it because now I'm familiar with that level of relationship, with that level of conflict, with allowing people to speak negatively about me, to my face online or behind my back. And to believe it. That's the part, not that they spoke ill, but that I believed it. And so today's message is really about centering yourself in this beautiful wisdom that your mind is a part of God's and you are very holy. You are very holy. You really are. Really sit with that. Allow yourself to feel, what does that feel like? And that is actually humility. It's a false humility to say, no, not me. True humility is almost the honest of it. Like, wow, is it true? Still, even after this and even after that, it's still true? And the answer is yes, because none of that is real. Like none of that even happened in the reality of love with a capital R. That was just learning. That was contrast. That was living in the world of illusion. But this, my mind is very holy. My mind is a part of God's, I am very holy. That is grounded in reality. That's eternal. That is universal truth. Those are principles to live by. So I'm going to go ahead and read this lesson if you have some more time, and there might be some more reflections. I know these last few have been a little longer, but I'm just really feeling that the encouragement from this friend to share first and to open up my heart again was important. I was in the first 30 some lessons just, reading and offering a few minutes of reflection, but there was still a timidness in really tying it and letting you see me, letting you feel me. And I want to do that now because I think I'm stronger. I'm stronger and I'm smarter, like my yoga teacher said. Every time you practice yoga, you get stronger and smarter. And every time you don't practice yoga, you get weaker and dumber, which has absolutely been true in my own life. All right, so let us see here. My mind is a part of God's. I am very holy. Today's idea does not describe the way you see yourself now. It does, however, describe what vision will show you. It is difficult for anyone who thinks he is in this world to believe this of himself. Yet the reason he thinks he is in this world is because he does not believe it. And that's just what we were speaking to. You will believe that you are a part of where you think you are. That is because you surround yourself with the environment you want, and you want it to protect the image of yourself that you have made. The image is part of this environment. What you see while you believe you are in it is seen through the eyes of the image, and this is not vision. Images cannot see. So I'm just going to pause here for a second because that's important. This idea that we create our own environment. And I had an image of my mind in my mind, and I was harboring it, that I wasn't good enough, that I had failed, that I was, all the things, just name the list. And so I created an environment. I had, I was ripe for a narcissistic type relationship to occur. And I don't throw that word around lightly because I'm not an expert in the field of narcissism. But I do know that there are certain personality traits that we attract to ourselves given the energy and the image that we have made of ourselves. So if I am, feeling bad about myself, I'm going to bring someone into my life who's going to say they're going to make me feel better, but also make me feel worse. Does that make sense? And this is why the Course of Miracles is saying what you see while you believe you are in it is seen through the eyes of the image. It's not vision. It's not truth, meaning it's just the image that you've created for yourself, and you are creating your environment. So to continue, the idea for today presents a very different view of yourself. By establishing your source, it establishes your identity, and it describes you as you must really be in truth. We will use a somewhat different kind of application for today's idea because the emphasis for today is on the perceiver rather than what he perceives. For each of the 3 to 5 practice periods today, begin by repeating today's idea to yourself, and then close your eyes and search your mind for the various kinds of descriptive terms in which you see yourself. Include all the ego-based attributes which you ascribe to yourself, positive or negative, desirable or undesirable, grandiose or debased. All of them are equally unreal because you do not look upon yourself through the eyes of holiness. In the earlier part of the mind-searching period, you will probably emphasize what you consider to be the more negative aspects of your perception of yourself. Toward the latter part of the exercise period, however, more self-inflating descriptive terms may well cross your mind. Try to recognize that the direction of your fantasies about yourself does not matter. Illusions have no direction in reality. They are merely not true. So powerful. So it's saying here, as you practice, you're going to see some of the negative things you think about yourself. And then as you continue, some of the better qualities that you might attribute to yourself. It's saying that it doesn't matter. Illusions have no direction in reality. They're not true. So behind the thoughts of good or bad is holiness, is the truth of who you really are. So it's saying here, a suitable unselected list for applying the idea for today might be as follows. I see myself as imposed on. I see myself as depressed. I see myself as failing. I see myself as endangered. I see myself as helpless. I see myself as victorious. I see myself as losing out. I see myself as charitable. I see myself as virtuous. You should not think of these terms in an abstract way. They will occur to you as various situations, personalities, and events in which you figure cross your mind. Pick up any specific situation that occurs to you, identify the descriptive term or terms you feel are applicable to your reactions to that situation, and use them in applying today's idea. After you named each one, add, but my mind is a part of God's. I am very holy. So I'm going to pause again here. It's like you're not thinking of these things the way that you see yourself in an abstract way. It's saying they're going to come to you, like I shared in this earlier video, that as situations in your life, as relationships, as personalities and events, as those situations, personalities, and events cross your mind, you're unpacking that with a thought about what it means and who you are in it. And then the course is asking us to say, after you've named it, like I just did earlier, this situation, I created this environment, I was feeling sorry for myself, I was feeling misunderstood. And instead of seeing those things straight away and saying, but my mind is a part of God's. My mind is part of God's, not a part. I am very holy. You know, when we don't say those things, we believe the images. We have that frame and we think it's the truth. And the course is saying it is not. But my mind is part of God's. I am very holy. During the longer exercise periods, there will probably be intervals in which nothing specific occurs to you. Do not strain to think up specific things to fill the interval, but merely relax and repeat today's idea slowly until something occurs to you. Wait, where am I? Yeah, sorry. Although nothing that does occur should be omitted from the exercises. Nothing should be dug out with effort. That's important. We don't need to go in there and start digging for dark, okay? Neither force nor discrimination should be used. As often as possible during the day, pick up a specific attribute or attributes you are ascribing to yourself at the time and apply the idea for today to them, adding the idea in the form stated above to each of them. If nothing particular occurs to you, merely repeat the idea to yourself with eyes closed. So it's powerful, right? To go through your day and realize, wow, I'm thinking some negative thoughts about myself. I'm in judgment about this. And boom, but my mind is part of God's. I am very holy. Do you see how important it is? I think you do, to retrain your mind. to the truth of who you are instead of the images that you have made. I trust this was useful. I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye for now.